Hi everyone, welcome back to the Edgewater Avenue YouTube channel. Today we are making the Chloe top, which is my first V-wire style. It has really great coverage, but also really great cleavage, and it has thick straps for lots of support, or you can make thin straps if you prefer that. You also have the option to add in a band, which I didn't show that in this video, but if you do want to make a band, then you can consult the written directions for that. So for materials, you will need swimwear fabric. Here I have two different swimwear fabrics for the lining and for the outer. This top is not going to be reversible because of the wire situation going on, so just be aware of that when you're choosing fabrics. Before showing the rest of the materials, it's a good time to mention that I am selling kits for this top. On the website, they're called the Chloe Findings Kits. And basically this has everything you need except for fabric. And that includes the V-wire in the exact size that I have been using. So you can either go and buy the kit to have everything you need, or you can buy the elastic, the wire, the channeling, each individually. So even if you don't want to commit to the whole kit, if you already have elastic or what have you, you can get just the wires or just the channeling, whatever you need. So then you're going to need some swimwear elastic. Here I have my 1/4 inch or 6mm elastic, which is used for all the seams except for the straps. Then I also have the 1 inch or 2.5cm elastic, which is used for the thick straps. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to do thinner straps, you can use 1/4 inch, or you can also use 3/8 inch elastic just to have a bit thinner of a look. Just be aware that you'll need to modify the strap openings on the pattern in order to fit that size of strap. You will of course need a V-wire. Like I mentioned, you can get this as part of a kit, or you can just buy them individually from my website. The exact dimensions for the wire that this pattern is drafted for is inside of the pattern. If you have another wire in mind, you're welcome to use that. Just be aware you might need to make some adjustments to make sure that that wire fits. Finally, the last special material is underwire channeling. You only need the tiniest bit of this. The kits include 10 inches or 25cm, and even that is pretty generous. It's probably a couple inches more than you really need. One note about the underwire channeling is you should pick one that matches decently well with your fabric, as it kind of shows just a little bit at the bottom of the V. Here are the pattern pieces. As always, make sure to refer to the individual pattern pieces for cutting instructions as far as how many to cut and whether you will cut on the fold or cut mirrored. Seam allowance is included in every pattern piece, but it varies depending on the pattern piece and depending on where in the pattern piece. So if you follow this tutorial or the written directions just step by step, I'll mention how much seam allowance to use in different areas, and that way you can sew this top as it is intended. And the pieces for the front are meant to be sewn together first, so there are notches that you're welcome to use to help you with that. So moving on to cutting, I'm going to start with my blue fabric, which is going to be my lining, and I'm going to cut 2 in each pattern piece. Keep in mind that the back and the front bottom are to be cut on the fold, but the front top piece is meant to be cut mirrored. Mirrored means you'll want to cut 2 opposites, so you can either cut one and flip the pattern piece and cut another, or do what I do and fold the fabric to cut 2 pieces at once, which will also mirror them. Then moving on to this dotted fabric, which is going to be my main fabric, I'm going to be cutting 2 in each pattern piece again. Once those pieces are done, you can cut your straps. The measurements for the straps are inside the direction pages for the pattern. Also, if you are cutting a band, you will do that at this time. Now we have all of our pieces. Moving on, the first thing we want to do is finish up our front pieces so everything is attached. So match up your fabrics, and you're going to flip the front top down onto the front bottom, right sides together. Line up the notches if you're using those, and then sew all along to attach the front top to the front bottom. For this, I will be using an overlock stitch, but you can also use a zigzag stitch or any stretch stitch of your choice. Once that is done, you can see we have finished the front pieces, and now we can move on to attaching elastic to the front as well as to our other pieces. So match your 2 front pieces with right sides together. Then you will sew and attach the 1/4 inch elastic onto the following seams. Notice that you will not be sewing the V-wire area at all. Leave that completely untouched. And also, if you are sewing a band, you are not going to be sewing the bottom line of the top. At this time, you're also going to match your back pieces with right sides together. And again, sew and attach elastic to the following seams, skipping the bottom line if you're doing the band. And finally, while we're at it, we're going to sew the straps in half lengthwise, but do not attach elastic to these yet. For all of the seams that we are sewing in this step, there is a 1/4 inch of seam allowance. So before I go over to my serger, I'm first going to sew everything I just showed you with a basting stitch. A basting stitch is a long straight stitch that's meant to be temporary, and this will help you tack the fabric together so that your elastic application goes nice and smooth. This is a technique I've only incorporated in the last couple years, but I recommend it for any swimmer pattern. Even if I don't show it in the tutorial, I am always doing this. Then I'm going to switch over to my serger and sew my final stitch along with my elastic. So here you can use either an overlock stitch, zigzag stitch, or any stretch stitch of your choice. When sewing the elastic here, you do not want any sort of pulling. You want it to sew on nice and even. I'm using an elastic foot to help guide the elastic in the right place as I sew, but this isn't a necessity if you don't have one. Also, if you struggle with elastic like most people do, I suggest you watch my elastic series, which has a bunch of tips and FAQs that have really helped a lot of people get more confident with elastic. Then to sew the straps, like I said, I'm not doing any elastic, just a regular stitch and 1/4 inch of seam allowance. So now everything is elasticized. Here you can see I haven't touched that V-wire area, and my side seams and strap openings are also still open. Our next objective is to prepare the straps. So get your 1 inch elastic out and cut it so it's about 1 inch or 2 longer than the actual strap. Place the elastic on one end of the strap, and using a basting stitch, we're going to sew down the elastic onto the strap. Do not backstitch. This basting stitch is going to come right back out. Once you've basted, you're going to take a loop turner and turn the strap to the right side, which will also bring the 1 inch elastic through. This is why we did this with a basting stitch, because the stitches are long enough that we can still poke our loop turner through and be able to pull that strap to the right side. Once the strap is turned, remove the basting stitch and straighten out your elastic. Then afterwards, I like to go in with a shorter straight stitch and secure either end of the strap so the elastic stays in place where it's at. Now we are going to insert the straps into the back piece. Notice here that my back piece is still inside out. So bring each strap under the side seam opening and into its respective strap opening, and then pin. You are now going to sew either a straight stitch or a stretch stitch and secure both of these straps down. I like to use a straight stitch for this because then I can go in and trim the excess afterwards. Now take the back piece to the right side. Before moving on, I recommend using a basting stitch and sewing closed the side seams, as this is going to make things easier in the next step. This is also the best time to double check the strap length. You can test it on yourself and just see if it's going to be the right fit for you. Now we are going to attach the back into the front piece. So with your back piece still right side out and your front piece still inside out, insert the back inside of the front so right sides are together. You are going to insert the straps into the respective strap openings, and you're also going to line up the side seams. Pin as you go and really make sure that nothing is twisted inside. Now we will sew down the straps just like we did with the back piece, and we are also going to sew the side seams. So again, for the straps I use a straight stitch, and for the side seams I also use a straight stitch, but I probably should use a lightning stitch or something that has a little more stretch, but where I can still trim the excess bulk. However, I've been doing a straight stitch for years and all my swimsuits are intact, so don't stress about it if you don't have any fancy stretch stitches. The side seams aren't really meant to stretch anyways. Now we can trim the excess, and since we left the V-wire area open, we can flip the top to the right side through that opening. Now all that's left is dealing with this wire area. Before I start, I like to go in with a basting stitch and sew either side of the V just to get my seams laying the way I want them to, and also trimming any excess elastic or thread that's hanging out. This is just to make things look simpler and easier to manage. So the way we're going to be sewing this channeling is stretching the V area of the top so it's nearly straight, and then sewing it just like that. And I don't know why I didn't do it here. I did it in all of my practice tops, but please take some scissors and snip about 1/4 inch or less at the very bottom of the V. This is going to allow you to spread the V open so it can be sewn straight. Like I said, I did it in all of my practice tops, and for some reason when I got to filming, I just didn't do it here. So you'll notice later on, my top ended up with a little bit of rippling in that V area, and that is why. So place the channeling so it's lined up with the raw edges of the top. The edge of the channeling should be lined up with the edge of the raw edges. And we're going to be sewing down the channeling 3/8 of an inch away from the raw edges. So this is on the left side of the channeling. You will be using a straight stitch for this. When you get to the V area, you will flatten the top out so we can keep sewing straight like I had mentioned earlier. Once the channeling is attached on one side, we are now going to trim the excess that is under the channeling. This will just reduce the bulk for when we sew the other side. Now flip the channeling to the lining side of the top, which will also cover up the raw edges that we just trimmed. Pin as needed, and we are now going to sew the remaining edge of the channeling again in a straight line, and again with a straight stitch. Now you can trim a little excess channeling and insert your V-wire. Underwire channeling is a tube, so just make sure you're inserting it inside the actual channeling and not between the channeling and the actual swimwear fabric. Finally, you can use a straight stitch or a bar tack stitch and sew down the very top of the channeling to keep that wire inside. Trim off any excess channeling that's peeking out, and you are all finished. Again, if you decided to make a band, there's a couple more steps to attach that on, so just make sure to view the written directions for that. And here is the final Chloe top. I love the amount of coverage on this top. It has you covered where you want it, but it also has such a great amount of cleavage. Thank you for watching this one. Make sure to pick up your Chloe top pattern, as well as your Chloe kit or wires or underwire channeling, whatever you need at edgewaterab.com. See you next time.